Sorry, I'm getting used to this new gavel. I'm bringing the October 11th, 2022 regularly scheduled board meeting for the Richland 2 Board of Trustees to order. If I can please have a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Holmes.
I make a motion that we go into executive session for the purpose of student appeals, breach of contract, and a security briefing.
Motion made by Dr. Holmes, seconded by Ms. Mackey. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Manning, if you could just let everyone know that I am participating and I'm on the call. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry I failed to mention that Dr. Scott is with us, but here via telephone today. Any other points of discussion? With that, we'll have the vote. Dr. Scott, are you logged in?
I am logged in, but I have not received anything, but my answer is yes. Oh, it just popped up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes unanimously. We'll now convene into executive session. Richland to come out of executive session.
Mr. Manning,
Dr. Holmes.
I make a motion that we came out of executive session at 6:29 p.m.
Second.
Motion made by Dr. Holmes, seconded by Ms. Mackey. Is there any discussion? All right, we'll have the vote. And for the record, Dr. Scott is with us via telephone tonight. Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move on to the inspirational moment, the Pledge of Allegiance. Tonight, we have the No Place for Hate group from Blythewood High School. If you'd please come forward.
We pledge from this day forward
To do our best at Blythewood High School.
To combat prejudice.
And to stop those
who violate someone's civil rights.
We will seek to understand those who are different.
We believe that one person
can make a difference.
And that no person
should stand by when opposing hate.
We will speak out against prejudice
and discrimination.
We will reach out.
Reach out
to those who are victims of hate.
We all know we must promote harmony,
equality,
and respect.
By signing the pledge,
we commit ourselves to create a community
that is no place for hate.
No place for hate.
No place for hate.
I will seek to gain understanding of those who are different from myself. I will speak out against prejudice and discrimination. I will reach out to support those who are targets of hate. I will promote respect for people and help foster a prejudice-free school. I believe that one person can make a difference. No person can be an innocent bystander when it comes to opposing hate. I recognize that respecting individual dignity and promoting intergroup harmony are the responsibilities of all students. Good evening. My name is Katie Webster, and I am a sophomore at Blythewood High School. I'm very excited to be here tonight to share with you our student-led coalition, No Place for Hate. The pledge that I just recited was signed by our students, faculty, and staff to unify our school's community around shared goals and shared commitments. Thank you to Dr. Davis, school board members, district and community officials for allowing us to be here tonight. No Place for Hate is a student-led program created and sponsored by the Anti-Defamation League, which was founded in 1913, where schools all across the country cultivate student leadership, unite school communities, and engage students and staff in learning while building a learning community of inclusivity, respect, and equity. This is why we wanted Blythewood High School to become an officially designated No Place for Hate school. We are one of 6 schools in the state of South Carolina to achieve this national designation, and our continued goal is to ensure that everyone who steps foot in Bengal Nation feels welcomed and valued for who they are. Blythewood High School's No Place for Hate campaign highlights student coalitions that plan and implement projects and activities, resulting in the students owning the projects and being responsible for enacting the campaign's main beliefs. No Place for Hate was developed to organize schools to work together and develop projects that enhance the appreciation of lived experiences and foster harmony among different groups of people. The campaign empowers schools to promote respect for individual and group differences while challenging prejudice and bigotry. There are many ways to engage students in developing No Place for Hate activities, and we wanted everyone at Blythewood High School to enjoy our activities. Our first activity was a door decorating contest where teachers were able to decorate their doors with the theme No Place for Hate. The purpose of this activity was to engage teachers and their students in promoting a message of kindness throughout Bengal Nation. Our second activity was a No Place for Hate Spirit Week, where we had dress days that went along with the different components of No Place for Hate. Our dress days were Mix It Up Day, Team Day, Blue Out Against Bullying, Peace, Love, and Kindness Day, and Don't Sleep on Hate Day. We had over 50 parents come to help cook and serve at our No Place for Hate faculty and staff cookout. This was a way for us to get families involved in our campaign while spreading a message of love throughout our campus. Our third activity was a unity concert, where students were able to sing and dance to empowering songs during lunch, while promoting unity throughout our student body. We had great success with our activities last year, and everyone enjoyed being a part of them. This year, we look to continue the tradition of promoting inclusivity and looking to expand on more ways to make everyone feel more comfortable in their own skin. We are very excited to see how our program grows this year. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ethan Kropp, and I'm the sophomore class president at Blythewood High School. Today is a great day in our school system. Yes, today we are making history as we are all gathered here to serve each other through incorporating No Place for Hate in our schools. Last year, our No Place for Hate journey began as our freshman class project. We sought to find a way to impact not only lives at Blythewood High School, but around the community and the world. Desmond Tutu, a South African priest, once said, "Do your little bit of good where you are. It's those little bits of good put together that overwhelm the world." The collective mission of our group is to ensure students know their powerful voices can be heard to change the world. As a people, united, we are stronger together than separate. The people that walk our respective halls every day are the future business leaders, entrepreneurs, and influential minds in our society. And in knowing this, we have to collaborate and coexist together. The world we live in now requires us to know who we are and whose we are. It is imperative that we all align ourselves together, no matter our race, creed, religion, nationality, or political affiliation. The foundation of all these principles begins with us and No Place for Hate. In order to make an impact in our world, we have found it to be a necessity to foster programs such as No Place for Hate. This foundation is dependent upon the idea that no matter who you are, where you come from, or what you believe, you should be treated equally. Maya Angelou once said, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." The world we live in now is filled with more hatred than ever, which for some makes it easier to choose hate. We are here to encourage you today to choose love. Everyone deserves love. No one is exempt. Showing and receiving love helps your overall mental and physical health. Showing love could be as simple as asking about someone's day, smiling at someone, or any small, kind gesture. We challenge you today to show more love and to treat others the way you want to be treated. When it comes down to it, we are all living in this life together. We should do everything in our power to make it easier on each other to live and coexist with one another. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." Reciprocating the hate you receive only will lead to more pain, destruction, and heartache. Clapping back in rude and disrespectful manners does not make you any better than the people hating or disrespecting you. In order to achieve true peace and tranquility within ourselves and others, sometimes you have to take a step back, smile in their face, and go about your business. Showing love to someone you may not agree with can be choosing to respectfully disagree with someone as you go your separate ways. To show love, you don't have to get along with everyone, and that's okay. Respecting and caring for people from a distance is a form of love too. When we choose love, that's when we truly drive out hate. No Place for Hate sets the standard and precedence for the people that make up our society. Learning and developing the habits to live by these principles now will allow us to pay it forward to future generations to change the world as we live and interact with each other. Today, in this moment, is where we make the conscious choice to make ourselves better as individuals, to be great collectively. Even though we live in a country that was based on the principles of achieving freedom, equality, justice, and fighting for love, we still see that hate bleeds a terrible wound in our society. Now, alongside one another, is where we stand together on the front lines, rallying our troops to combat the prejudice, injustice, and hate we recognize today in our society. What better place to start this revolution than in our school system, where education and diversity breeds creativity and togetherness as we show solidarity amongst students, teachers, faculty, staff, and administrators to cultivate the future of our society. I believe that all of us gathered here today in this room with the same spirit, mind, and purpose will come together as one to carry out the No Place for Hate mission throughout our schools. Today is a celebration of a new beginning and a new movement within our society. The time is now. Now is the time to continue to work and expand our horizons in our journey, as together, we are No Place for Hate. Thank you. Now, without further ado, I'd like to present to you all our No Place for Hate banner.
All right, I see some board members that want to speak up. So Dr. Holmes and Ms. Mackey.
I just want to say to you all, I absolutely love that you all are doing that, because I feel a little full right now, because I've been on this kick that a public school is just that. A public school is for everybody. Everybody. And to see it start with our young people such as yourself, that is exactly what is going to bring about the change that we need. Thank you. If I can sign your petition, I'll come sign your petition. I love it. And thank you to the youth. You both spoke so well. I'm so proud of you. Together we can change things.
Ms. Mackey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was sitting here taking copious notes of the things that you were saying, but Ms. Katie and Mr. Ethan, suffice it to say that it does my heart good to know that you are what our future looks like. You are the adults who will be leading meetings like this in the future, and who will be teaching, and who will be in the community. And it does my heart good to know that that is the environment you're fostering at your high school. Mr. Sherman and all of us who are here, I just appreciate knowing that this is what our future leadership looks like. Bless you all, and thank you for being here to bless us this evening.
All right, with that, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. It's hard to believe that I'll probably only do that one more time in a school board meeting to give the Pledge of Allegiance and to hear the great students. Our consent agenda, if I can have approval, please.
The agenda first.
I'm sorry, approval of the agenda. Yes, if I can have a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Mackey.
I move to approve the October 11th, 2022 regular board meeting.
Thank you. I have a motion from Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Holmes. Is there any discussion?
Clarification, agenda. I said the date in the regular board meeting. I meant to say agenda for that meeting.
Okay, let's make sure to approve the agenda for the October 11th, 2022 regular
That's correct.
board meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And that second's appropriate still?
Second.
Okay, Dr. Holmes, is there any discussion? With no discussion, we'll take the vote. Motion passes 6 yes, 1 no. If I can now have a motion for the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Agostini,
I would like to break up the consent agenda, please.
would you like to break it up individually, or you just want to pull one item out?
Just item 5.4, the employment recommendations, releases, and in-district transfers.
Okay, we'll pull out item 5.4. Do you have a motion for the remainder of the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Agostini,
I move to approve the item 5.2, approval of minutes from the previous meeting, and item 5.3, student admission request into the district's adult education program under the consent agenda for the October 11th, 2022 board meeting.
motion made by Ms. Agostini. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. McFadden. Is there any discussion? All right. With no discussion, Mrs. Agostini, once the motion comes up, we'll verify it's accurate.
Mrs. Agostini, you're pulling, what are you pulling?
Item 5.4.
5.4. So you move to approve the consent agenda for October 11, 2022 without item 5.4?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Agostini, that looks correct.
Yes.
Okay. With no discussion, we'll take the vote. Motion passes 5 yes, 2 no. Now I need a motion for item 5.4.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Mackey.
I move to approve item 5.4, employment recommendations,
Second.
releases, and in-district transfers.
Second.
All right, motion made by Ms. Mackey, seconded by Dr. Holmes. Is there any discussion? Ms. Agostini.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Yes. I am going to abstain from this vote tonight. I have concerns about page number 5, employee number 3, in the recommendations in terms of looking at the job description and the resume of the proposed employee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Mackey.
Just to comment that we don't discuss what the particulars of what goes on in executive session, but for this particular employee who is more credentialed than most people are sitting on this board this evening, I highly support the recommendation.
All right, any other discussion? With no further discussion, we will take the vote.
Dr. Caution Parker.
Motion passes 6 yes, 1 abstention. All right, we'll now move on to public participation. If I could have Mr. Gus Philpott come forward.
Good evening. I'm Gus Philpott, members of the board, superintendent. Tonight, I thank the 4 departing members of the school board. They were elected in November 2018, and the community, teachers, staff, and students have watched this board in action for 4 years. As I considered what to say tonight, I realized that each of the 4 has done the best that he or she could do. I learned that about me in intense self-exploration workshops in 1979 to 1983. Even when I was being a jerk, at the time it was the best I could do. Why wouldn't that be true of each person here tonight, including the 4 here who will attend their last meeting as board members in 2 weeks? They did the best that they could do. Years ago, I came across this, quote, "If I could view this disaster as a gift to be unwrapped, I might find a way to feel enhanced instead of diminished, grateful instead of bitter." The Richland 2 School District is about to take a huge leap forward. As you prepare to vote in the upcoming election, view it through this lens. If you owned a corporation with $1 billion in assets and an annual budget of $300+ million, whom would you want on your board of directors? You, the voters, are the owners. Choose wisely, and District 2 will emerge from this disaster enhanced and grateful.
All right, if I can have Ms. Tamara Brown come forward. Unless I pronounced it wrong, I have, is it Tamara Brown? Tamara Brown? Okay. Miss Brittany Portee? I have a Brittany Portee. All right, with that, I have no other folks signed up for public participation. I'll now move on to our student appeals. If I can have a motion, please. If I can have a motion on student appeals.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Mackey.
for student 1, I move to deny the appeal. Actually, before I do that, can I take a moment to go back to something?
Yes.
I'd made notes when I was looking at the minutes. I wanted there to be, with regard to the minutes from the previous minutes, for the previous meeting, there's a Scribner's error. The minutes from the previous meeting. We need to change 27 to 13. Should I do
Ms.
that
Mackey,
later?
I can't do that right now. We're on
Can
the
I go back
student
to it?
appeals.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I can go back to correct that later on, I'd love that consideration. If not, we'll move on.
All right, let's move on to the student appeals for now.
Deny. Student 1, my motion is to deny the appeal.
Motion's been made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Agostini. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, we'll take the vote. Motion passes 5 yes, 2 no. Mrs. Mackey.
My motion for student 2 is to deny the appeal.
Motion made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Agostini. Any discussion? With no discussion, we'll have the vote. Motion passes 5 yes, 2 no. Mrs. Mackey?
Mr. Chair, for student 3, my motion is to deny the appeal.
Motion made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Agostini. Any discussion? With no discussion, we'll have the vote. Motion passes 6 yes, 1 no. Mrs. Mackey?
Yes, Mr. Chair, for student 4, I move to deny the appeal.
Motion made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Agostini. Is there any discussion? No discussion, we'll have the vote. Ms. Mackey? Motion passes 6 yes, 1 no. Mrs. Mackey?
Yes, Mr. Chair, for student 5, I move to deny the appeal.
Motion made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Agostini. Any discussion? With no discussion, we'll have the vote. Motion passes 6 yes, 1 no. I'll now take item 7.2, motion on breach of contract.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Mackey?
there are 3 items, 3 up for consideration. For the first this evening, I move that we direct the administration to make a formal complaint to the State Board of Education regarding professional employees who breached their employment contract with the district pursuant to board policy GCQC-GCQD, resignation of professional staff.
Ms. Mackey, is that for one or for all 3 or?
It's for all 3.
For all 3?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, motion's made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I was hoping that we were going to separate the 3 of them.
I have the motion that's on the floor in a second at this point.
All right, then I will not be supporting it.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? With no discussion, we'll have the vote. Motion passes 4 yes, 3 no. We have no other executive session items that need attention. So we will now move on to item 8.1, policy approval for IHD, adult/community education. If I can have a motion.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. McFadden? Were you speaking up? Okay, Ms. Mackey?
Move to approve policy IHD, adult community education.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Holmes. Any discussion? With no discussion, we'll take the vote. Motion passes unanimously. I'll now take a motion on item 8.2, Policy approval for policy BAA, board self-evaluation.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Agostini.
I move to approve policy BAA, board self-evaluation as presented.
Motion made by Ms. Agostini. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Holmes. Is there any discussion? No discussion. We'll take the vote. Motion passes unanimously. Item 9.1, clarification regarding the September 13th, 2022 board meeting minutes. If I can have a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Mackey.
a question has been raised about a Scrivener's error entered into board docs during the board meeting on September 13th, 2022 that was corrected in the board meeting minutes from September 13th, 2022. The correction reflected then in the minutes made no material change to the motion. The board meeting minutes from September 13th, 2022 reflect the verbatim motion that was stated by Dr. Holmes. For these reasons, I move that the board confirm that the minutes from the September 13th, 2022 board meeting accurately reflect the action taken by the board at the September 13th, 2022 meeting regarding Dr. Davis's evaluation and contract based on the motion made at the meeting by Dr. Teresa Holmes. Mr. Chair, after reviewing Dr. Davis's, the motion that she made was, Mr. Chair, after reviewing Dr. Davis's report on the district's progress and considering the board members' comments regarding Dr. Davis's performance, I move that we conclude, as a board, that Dr. Davis receive an overall meets expectation evaluation for the 2021-2022 school year. I further move that as a result of Dr. Davis's overall meets expectation evaluation, that Dr. Davis's employment contract with the district be extended 1 year through June 30th, 2026.
Okay, so the actual motion in that is to confirm the minutes from the September 13th, 2022 board meeting accurately reflect the action taken by the board at the September 13th, 2022 board meeting regarding Dr. Davis's evaluation and contract. Is all of that part of your motion, or?
I was clarifying all of it. The actual motion is what you just read.
Okay.
I move that the board confirm that the minutes from the September 13th, 2022 board meeting accurately reflect the action taken by the board at the September 13th, 2022 meeting regarding Dr. Davis's evaluation and contract based on the motion made at the meeting by Dr. Teresa Holmes.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Agostini.
I'm just going to make the comment. I appreciate us looking into it. I would have, loved to have seen the motion to go back and review it before having it presented here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this was part of our board docs when presented to us.
It was.
Any other comments? I don't know when it was added, but it was part of our board docs. I know we met the 24-hour notification. All right, if there's no other discussion, we'll take the vote. Christine, do you have what you need? Okay, so the motion is presented on the screen, made by Ms. Mackey, seconded by Dr. Caution Parker, and we'll take the vote. Motion passes 4 yes to no and 1 abstention.
Mr. Chair, can you move the screen up some so we can see who the votes were, or is it not possible to do that?
I don't know. Can we move it up so we can see, so people can see who all voted which way?
Or just let us know Ms. Lewis, if you're able to see.
Why?
Well, my vote was no. This is Dr. Scott. My vote was no.
We can see that, Ms. Scott. Thank you.
Okay. There you go, right there.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 10.1, policy. This is for no action. Policy revision proposal, policy BK, board membership and professional associations.
Mr. Manning?
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Scott.
Yes. I would like to make a motion for policy 10.1, policy BK, board membership and professional association. I would like to remain with the old policy where it indicates that we maintain an individual membership in the National School Boards Association through its affiliates with and change from state group with Richland School District 2.
Okay, so you want to make a motion that we undo the recommendation to strike membership in the National School Boards Association.
Right, but we have to change from the state group because we will no longer be a part of the state group, but with individual or Richland 2.
I don't clarify no longer be part of the
Okay,
state.
if you look, if it says affiliation with the state group, that was a part of the South Carolina School Boards Association. So they will no longer be a part of the National School Boards, but because they're not going to be a part of it, I don't want us and the new school board members who are coming in to be denied that right to be a part of the National School Boards Association because there are so many workshops and conferences that they offer that I think, especially for the new school board members, could benefit from that, as well as some of us that's been on the board. So I don't want us to remove our membership from them, although the state school board association is removing their membership. I would like for Richland 2 to remain.
Mr. Chair, I think you need a second, but I'd like to discuss it after you get a second.
Yeah, let me get a second on that motion to undo the language, though there's still a little bit of a conflict because the way the language is written in here, we're maintaining an indirect membership. So, Dr. Scott, if you've asked to unstrike that language, that's not accurate.
Point of order.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Let's get a second, and then
can I get a second, please?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mrs. Agostini. Thank you. All right. So to continue the conversation, though, what you've asked is to undo the strike, but the strike includes indirect membership, which we can't have. Ms. Agostini?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was my understanding from our board retreat that we would still, as board members, be able to attend the National School Boards Association meetings at, isn't it an upcharge of like $180 or something per meeting?
That's correct.
Is...
Yes, we could still attend National School Board meetings. The question is, does the district want to maintain a membership with the National School Boards Association, which includes other things, but it doesn't preclude us from going if we're not a member. You can still attend National School Boards.
Right, but it costs more money if we do that. And I think it would just be beneficial that we just be members of it.
But
can I?
Yes, Ms. Agostini, go ahead.
But isn't the fee, and maybe Dr. Franklin can help us with that, to let us know the difference in the two. I thought it was like $8,500. So even if we all went to these meetings, we would still be able to go and not incur the $8,500 expense. I mean, more than likely, even if, 7 people went to, the 2 meetings that they have a year or 1 meeting, it would be less expensive for us not to maintain the relationship since we still have access to that. If somebody can clarify
Ms.
that.
Agostini, it's not just meetings, it's workshops and conferences as well.
Ms. Mackey?
If I could provide some clarification, because this is the first year that the National School Boards Association has had the mass exodus of state school boards association being in membership with them, the rules are kind of fluid right now. Right now, they are saying that even if a state school boards association is not a member of the National School Boards Association, that individual board members can still attend conferences and workshops right now. This is until December 31st. We don't know what's going to happen effective January 1 of next year. This is what they have in place right now. Local school boards are members of the National School Boards Association through the South Carolina School Boards Association. The South Carolina School Boards Association is not a member of NSBA right now and has joined the South Carolina School Boards the Consortium of State School Boards Association, COSBA. That is what the South Carolina School Boards Association has paid membership into instead of NSBA. However, until the end of the year, individual board members, there's nothing to preclude them from going to conferences and workshops that the NSBA is hosting individually right now until December 31st. There's not been any kind of, if I could finish my statement, that'd be great. But they've not made any sort of ruling going forward. So individual board members can't be members of NSBA. It has to be through their state school boards association.
Mr. Manning.
Dr. Scott.
Yes, and that's correct. That's why I'm asking that we remain. When the South Carolina School Boards Association decided to make this change, they took the leadership of only the people that served on their board. They did not send a survey or speak to board members on each school board. They only allowed the representation of that district to go and speak on behalf of all school board members. And I don't agree with that because there are many of us. And I've also had this conversation with many school board members from other school districts that felt the same needs and desires that I felt, that they don't speak on behalf of the entire school district. And some of them are also going to remain with their membership with national. We talk about being a premier school district. Well, we need to have a premier school board and be a part of these national associations. When we look at Dr. Davis and some of his cabinet members, as well as other colleagues in the district, they belong to national organizations that tie to being a superintendent or tied to being a deputy or whatever the other positions are. So as premier, we need to be tied to a national organization, not just only with South Carolina, with the new organization that they formed in South Carolina, but being a part of national. And even with this motion, I would love to see this conversation be moved to next month with the new school board members to get their intake. But if that's not possible, we can always vote on this and then bring this policy back up when new innovative board members get on board. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could provide clarification.
Ms. Mackey, just give me 1 second to state, though, that just because it gets struck from this does not mean that boards cannot approve membership in any organization. This is just striking the mandate per board policy that we be a part of that organization. And so, you know, I think, Dr. Scott, I appreciate your comment other than the innovative board part, but I do think that I think we either need to mandate all the organizations, if we want to put that in policy, that we should be part of, or mandate none and then allow the board at the beginning of each school year to determine, or whenever the appropriate time is, to determine which associations they want to join, because this does have a fiscal impact, as Mrs. Agostini stated, an additional $8,500 plus whatever our COSBA membership is at some point. And so to make this in a vacuum without looking at the full impact, I think we need to make sure we're there. But again, I want to be clear, striking this does not preclude us from joining the National School Boards Association. It just no longer would mandate it.
Mr. Manning? If I could provide clarification, Mr. Manning has asked.
Go ahead, Ms. Mackey, and then.
If I could provide clarification, each person who occupies a seat at this table speaks for the community. We have not spoken to every single community member who's comprised of Richland 2, but you make decisions based on what you have. I like to think that we're all innovative school board members. We were so innovative at the South Carolina School Boards Association that voting to leave NSBA fell 1 vote shy of passing. So the School Boards Association vote was split. There were half of the people who wanted to stay at NSBA, including me. That was my vote. I voted that we not leave NSBA. And there were 1 vote in the majority prevailing side who wanted to leave NSBA. And just as we do on this vote, you respect the right of the majority to govern. And the vote passed, and we moved forward. With regard to COSBA, I'm not sure if there's a lack of understanding from school board members, but the COSBA is absolutely a national organization. It's not a state organization.
Ms. McFadden.
Mr. Manning, I would like to say that I agree with what you said, that, each school board should leave it up to themselves to decide which organizations that they want to be a part of. And so therefore, I would ask and like to make a motion, once this one goes through, if possible, if it doesn't pass, that we table this and let the new board, like what you said, decide at each interval and each year, however we decide to do that, to vote. Because we do have this that has been struck. I understand what you're saying, that it says that we aren't tied to it, but this has already been in practice, and I would like to leave that open for the new board members that are coming on in less than a month. So if we could, by chance, table this to make it fair across the board, literally, for those that are coming on to have a discussion, so that we're not saying that we're not going to be a part of this organization as soon as they come on. I would appreciate that.
And I hear.
In that case, I'll rescind my motion that I made, Mr. Manning. I would like to rescind that motion and restate my motion.
Okay.
All right, hold on one second. I think we have a couple comments, and let's come back.
Okay.
Ms. McFadden, I hear what you're saying, but at this point, we don't have a way to be compliant with this policy as it stands. It doesn't matter whether it's some future board that y'all want more than this board or us or whoever it is. We cannot be compliant with the policy as written because we can't maintain an indirect membership.
Well, we can just change the wording and drop out through its affiliation with the
There's
state
a
group.
Point of order.
And reword that.
Mrs. Agostini.
That's a possibility.
Dr. Scott rescinded her motion.
Did she say? I thought she said extend. She said rescind.
Oh, maybe I misunderstood. I thought she said.
No. I said rescind.
You said you rescind the motion. Okay. All right.
Yes.
So what? But we had.
So my motion now is going to be that we table policy BK.
Okay. Motion to table. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Agostini. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I just want the record to reflect that we
hold on. Wait. I can't have more than one people speak. Dr.
Right,
Scott,
I need
what
to
did you
finish my
say?
motion. I would like to table policy BK, board membership in professional associations, until after the November 8th election.
Correct. We heard that, and Mrs. Agostini seconded it.
Right, but I didn't give a date. I just said I wanted to table so it could come back up on the next board meeting. And I wanted to make sure it's after the November 8th.
I'm clear on that. So the motion made, seconded by Mrs. Agostini. Ms. Mackey, you had this point of discussion.
Just a comment that every board who is seated in this seat is an active board member until such time that they are not. And this is the first time I've ever seen, and I've been on the board, 8 years? And you've been on it longer than me, that I've ever seen such an effort to make sure that board members who are not running for re-election don't have an active voice in things that are taking place right now as elected until November of 2022. And that is how long I will work and actively make decisions innovatively on behalf of the people who placed me here.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey. Any other discussion?
Mr. Manning, I just want to make a comment. I understand what Ms. Mackey is saying, but why is she making decisions on a policy for membership that would take place with new people that's coming on in just a few weeks, and she would no longer be on the board?
Should I understand that it's impossible to be compliant with this motion? I
go back to the fact that there's no way that any board can be compliant with this because we don't have an indirect option for the National School Boards Association. But the motion on the table is to table it until after November. There's a second. Is there any discussion on that motion? All right, we'll take the vote.
This item is for discussion. This is not an action item, so you will have to do a hand vote.
But we have to take a motion to table it.
Yeah, you have to do a hand vote because I can't put it.
Okay, so hand vote. All in favor of tabling it? We have a yes on the phone. All opposed? Motion fails. 4 no, 3 yes. I would, at this point, recommend that we leave it as it is, as it's made the recommendation to us. Again, no board can comply with that, so I would like to see that move forward.
So what will we need to do to make it compliant so that we could?
LaShonda, Ms. McFadden, why don't you just hold off? I mean, we only have a few more weeks.
Dr. Scott, Mrs. McFadden had the floor. I think it's inappropriate to call out another board member while they're in the middle of asking a question like that.
She's fine. I believe she's giving me guidance. That's fine. I'll just.
All right.
Ms. McFadden, I'm happy to answer your question.
No,
the only
we're
reason
not.
that you don't want to explain it?
No, we're moving on. Thank you. We'll now move on to item board policy BID, board member compensation and expenses.
Mr. Manning,
Dr. Scott.
I would like to make a motion that we table policy revision, policy BID, board member compensation and expenses until after the November 8th election.
Motion made by Dr. Scott. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Agostini. Any discussion? With no discussion, we'll take the vote. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion fails. 4 no, 3 yes. All right, any discussion from board members?
Mr. Manning,
Dr. Caution Parker.
I would like to just add one sentence to this policy, probably in the third paragraph at the end. No advance payment or no advance compensation to board members will be made.
Okay, the motion is made by Dr. Caution Parker. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Mackey. Is there any discussion?
There's
Yes,
there's
Mr.
already a policy that's, there is.
Mrs. McFadden, and then Dr. Scott.
Okay, thank you.
There's a policy for that already in here. Didn't have time to look it up because you just now made it. But there's already a policy for that you can't do, that you can't get it. But staff and teachers and things like that will be able to get an advancement if necessary, a financial advancement. So that should be included with board if they should so need it, because you don't know someone's financial situation. And so to put that in there without allowing them to be able to do that I don't think that that's appropriate to be putting in this policy, because there's already a policy for that.
Dr. Scott.
Yes, and the policy I think that Ms. McFadden is referencing also includes with extenuating circumstances. But with this policy, if we want to go into the weeds, we need to include that we will not allow board members to purchase vehicles and use school district money for purchasing vehicles when the conference is in one location and everything that we need to attend is in that building. So where can we add that to the policy of board members purchasing vehicles when they're out at conferences and charging the school district for mileage and garage parking, valet parking, and all of that? Where do we include that in what policy?
Well, right now I have a motion on the table that's for board members not receiving advancements to conferences. That's what's on the table right now. Dr. Caution Parker.
All right, and being in this district 42 years, there's a history of some board members not fairly or adhering to repaying the district funds from trips that maybe they've gone on trips and they've advanced themselves, or they've gone to the hotels and they've upgraded the hotels, or just all sorts of reasons. But this has always been an issue with board members, and I remember at one time when we did add this about advance, but I think that if we do that, add advance, then there needs to be a time limit as to when a board member has to pay back the compensation they received, and if not, then it's taken out of their salary, their pay that they receive on a monthly basis.
And I totally agree with
Dr. Scott needs to recognize you. Dr. Caution Parker's not done.
These funds are taxpayers' money. Taxpayers, people who sit out here, and we're taking their money and running on trips and can't pay anything back when there's a time limit. There's no time limit. And so therefore, the district suffers. The district suffers, taxpayers suffer, and I do believe that the community needs to know that when a board member asks for advance compensation, no, I don't know everybody's financial situation, but if you can't afford it, then don't do it. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. But these are taxpayers' funds we're talking about that they're putting in our pockets to keep and to do what we want to do, to go on these trips or whatever and upgrade the hotels. And that's not right.
Dr. Scott, I'm going to let Mrs. Agostini wants to speak. You've had multiple opportunities. I'm going to ask her, and then I'll come back to you. Mrs. Agostini.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I just want to address its policy DKC, expense authorization reimbursement, and I think that's what Dr. Caution Parker is referring to, but that's a policy that I think needs to be addressed because it's referred to in the policy that we're looking at now, but it says the district will prepay hotel reservations at the single rate, plane or train reservations, and registration fees if requested in advance. The district will not provide additional advance funding unless unique circumstances exist and are approved by the chief financial officer. So it's the chief financial officer that is approving these advanced funds, and there is no deadline stated in this policy in regard to, and I do agree that it needs to be reimbursed in a timely manner, but that is not stated, the definitive date.
Dr. Scott.
And I wanted to say, too, that I do agree with Dr. Caution Parker about her statement, because there have been several board members who have upgraded hotel rooms as well as car rentals, and that needs to be addressed moving forward. So I'm glad that she made mention of that, because that is the taxpayers' money, and we need to make sure that we're being good stewards of that. Thank you.
Dr. Holmes?
Yes, I think the issue is that we've had members who have gotten advances and not paid them back. Anytime there's no issue with upgrading a room or renting a car for the whole unit of the body, as long as that prepayment has been paid back. What we've looked at is that we've had members who have not paid the money back, or have not, if they did an upgrade, they did not pay the difference in the upgrade. We're talking about two different things. So what the policy is, what they're talking about is, I agree with Dr. Caution Parker, you're allowed to do that as long as you know that you have to pay the difference yourself. Or if there is a rental of a car, it has to go on one board member's funds, but that car is not for one board member, it's for the group. So let's not confuse the issue here. The real issue here is that you cannot take public money and not pay it back. And I think that's where the issue is, and that's why we're seeing people wanting to have.
Mr. Manning,
I think I have the floor, Mr. Manning.
Dr. Holmes still has the floor.
No, I'm saying after
Dr. Holmes still has the floor.
Mr. Manning. Thank you. So let's not confuse the issue and distort the issue. The issue is a non-repayment of funds, not an advancement of that sort that somebody has paid back.
Mrs. Agostini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to do that, to my fellow colleagues, I think we're looking at the wrong policy. That needs to be addressed in policy DKC, which is referenced in the last sentence of this policy that we're looking at today, BID.
Ms. Agostini, my only comment to that is I think in our policy it refers to the fact that we will follow policy DKC as it relates to travel. Policy DKC does state about advancements. However, I think the difference for me between staff, which DKC is at its heart, a staff policy, and board members is when we ask for advancements as a board member, and as it was stated, the CFO is put in an untenable position of determining whether a board member does have some sort of need for that advancement. It puts administration in an awkward position for us as a board to ask for an advancement when we get a stipend for being on the board. And I think that we have a different accountability than our staff. It also puts Dr. Davis in a spot. We've had board members ask for unhappy with what was advanced and threaten his job because he wouldn't say yes to what they wanted when he was trying to follow IRS and state law as regarded to that. So I think it puts district administration in a very difficult spot, and I don't think that that's appropriate, which is why I think putting it in the board policy for the board is the correct place to address this issue, in my opinion.
Right, Mr. Manning, I wanted to say something, because I want to make sure I heard correctly. If not, I can go back and listen to the recording. But did I hear that Dr. Holmes said that when you rent a vehicle, that's for the entire board? Because if so, that's something we probably need to discuss at a later time, because I'm not aware of anyone renting a vehicle and have said that that ride is for the entire school board. So I would like to have that discussion at a later time.
I appreciate it. Yeah,
I'll wait until we get to the agenda, and I'll add that to the agenda. So thank you.
Okay, so right now we have the motion that's been made is that board members cannot receive advancement for travel. That's the motion that's been seconded. Is there any other discussion on this item?
Where do we intend to put this?
Dr. Caution Parker, please reiterate what you said.
I said the third paragraph on this policy, BID, the last sentence.
So it would state that board members will be reimbursed according to the same expenditure standards as district employees under policy DKC, except as it regarded to advancements which board members are not allowed to receive.
Right. No advance compensation.
No advance compensation.
To board members.
All right. If there's no other discussion, we'll take the vote on that requested amendment. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye. All opposed, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay. So 1 opposed, 6 yeses. All right. Any other discussion on this policy?
Yes, Mr. Chair. In the
Mrs.
last
Axtini.
paragraph, it says the district will reimburse board members for all reasonable and necessary expenses incurred in attending any meeting or conference. Who approves that? Who is that actually, and who determines what's reasonable?
Dr. Davis.
If you, in addition to that, it says when on official business of the board or the school district. So we would base the reasonable attendance of said conference and reimbursements when you are on official board business or the school district business. So if you were assigned to go to a specific conference from the board, or it's a conference that is one of the conferences listed above, or a conference that is reasonably associated with your duties and responsibilities, then that will constitute the reimbursement for reasonable and necessary expenses incurred in attending any meeting or conference.
Okay, but I'm asking actually who is the person that makes the
District
decision?
administration. Now be a conversation between myself and the CFO.
Okay, because, and we've talked about it, the rental car that was used in San Diego. I'm trying to understand how a board member can rent a car in San Diego when the hotel is 0.2 of a mile away from the convention center. The airport in San Diego is a 10-minute max Uber ride, which might be $15. So the exorbitant expense that somebody used to rent a car in San Diego when it's very much a walking or Uber town just seems excessive. And that's why I'm wondering how this would get approved when everything is so contained.
I think clarification and the expectations is what's needed, and that's why we're having this discussion. And I believe if a board member deems to put those types of things very specifically in there, that these are things that are not approvable or not approved, then administration can again add additional stipulations when it comes to reasonable reimbursements as it relates to that. So it could be anything from transportation to additional luggage, to any type of upgrade that is not refundable. I mean, that is not, if they do those things, the expectation would be to pay the difference or pay for themselves. But when they submit their reimbursements, those reimbursements would be denied because those will be unapproved expenses. If we need to come up with a list of unapproved expenses, then we can come up with a list and place in an administrative rule regarding unapproved expenses.
Excuse me, Mr. Mann?
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Caution Parker.
Piggybacking on what Dr. Davis said, now would that would fall under administrative rules, right?
If we came up with a
With a
list,
list,
if we
yes.
came up with a list, the appropriate place to put it is in the administrative rule. If
Okay.
not, if things should subsequently change, then you would then have to come back and vote on this policy again. An example would be prior to Ubers, it was common to rent a car prior to Ubers. Now that Ubers are and Lyfts are readily available, that's not usually a common practice, depending on the location of the hotel from the venue. But we don't have it specified in policy or an administrative rule to say that if the venue is X number of miles from the hotel, then you should take an Uber. The expectation, though, according in agreements with Ms. Agostini, is that you would minimize, the whole expectation is to minimize the expense of the district while serving the district in that capacity, in your official capacity.
So I think what I'm hearing, Dr. Davis, is maybe it would be beneficial to have some revisions to suggested revisions to the administrative rule with some input possibly from the board to address concerns.
I don't believe there is an associate administrative rule with this policy currently. So we would need to create an administrative rule to govern policy, to assist policy BID, specifically identifying the last paragraph of reimbursements of board members for all reasonable and necessary expenses occurred in attending any meeting or conference with an official business of the board or the school district.
So could it be, is there an administrative rule with DKC which is also referred to?
Off the top of my head, I can't remember if there's an administrative rule with DKC, but I don't believe that it is so. And again, DKC, again, as I think you stated very clearly, it's really a policy for employees.
Right.
And for my recommendation is to, when possible, the board should not necessarily be, actions should be aligned with the expectation of the public, because that dynamic is different. As you stated, right. Having the discussion with an employee of stating you qualify or should qualify for this, and having then that said conversation with a member of the board is a total different type of conversation.
Okay, so is the board? It sounds like the board is wanting a administrative rule to go along with this. We can either do it that way, or we can. And I see you, Ms. Agostini. I'm going to come to you. Or we can say that anything that administration deems to be outside of what's the term here, reasonable and necessary, could be brought to the board for a full vote to.
We do not bring administrative rules to the board.
No, I didn't say administrative rule. I said we could determine, if you were to determine that an expense you're being requested to reimburse is not reasonable, it could come to the board to make that determination and take it out of your hands.
That could be a step that the board would use.
I'm just saying we could do one or two ways with that. Mrs. Agostini?
And I guess my point is I don't want an administrative rule. I'm just trying to figure out who would think renting a car. We've been on the board for a number of years. I actually did rent a car in San Diego because I stayed at a different hotel. I paid for the difference, and I paid for the car. So, but when you're 0.2 of a mile away, I didn't.
Well, Mrs. Agostini, are you asking for?
I don't want reimbursement, no, because that was a personal choice.
That's not what I was going to ask you. I'm asking, do you want to change the policy in some way to address your concerns?
No, I would like for either the person, did they get permission to rent the car?
Mrs. Agostini, we're not here to address.
Excuse me.
I've
got the floor.
I understand, but we're not here to address an individual member's issue like that. We're here to address, do we want a policy change in this policy that would address your concern?
Well, I guess I'm trying to figure out who determines what reasonable and necessary is.
Right, and we're saying that we can either come up with a administrative rule that goes along with this, or if the board wants to add reasonable things into the policy.
I think common sense would be adequate.
Okay, thank you.
Mr.
Mackey.
Mr. Chair, one of the things I'd like to state is that if we're going to go through a list of examples of infractions that people have made or people have deemed inappropriate, then we could probably take stand in line, from registering for for conferences, not showing up, not going, upgrading a room, not paying it back, there are a list of fingers to pointed that could go around the room. I think the purpose of doing this is to try to reel that in so that Dr. Davis administration are not placed in an awkward position of having to determine that a board member's expenses are reasonable and appropriate, or if they don't pay something back ever, or go to a conference, don't pay it back. For example, there are lots of examples I'm sure that we could use, as Dr. Caution Parker has mentioned, for decades that you have been here and done that. I think I want us not to lose sight of the purpose of addressing this policy and making the revisions so that there won't be those awkward moments in the future.
All right, so it's rare that that I do this as the chair, but it's my understanding I have the ability to do so. I would also like to make a motion that we add to the policy a statement that says something to the effect that if a board member owes the district back for expenses, then until that's paid back, they cannot travel or go to conferences.
Mr. Manning?
So that's my motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Holmes. Is there any discussion? All right, with no discussion, all in favor, raise your right hand or say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. All right, any other motions or?
Mr. Chair.
Mrs. Agostini.
Yeah, I have another concern about the meeting, conferences, and seminars, and just the few that are listed here. That is very limiting and very time-consuming to put it on a board agenda. I mean, how do we even get it on a board agenda? Because when I request something to be put on a board agenda, it generally doesn't get approved. So I've got to go through the process of, one, getting it on the agenda to get a vote, and then to get a vote. So that's, 4 weeks down the line if somebody wants to attend something else other than what's listed here. And, I asked for, or just looking at, for example, where the superintendent traveled, he went to 10 different conferences or under 10 different groups. And so basically we're saying we can only go to 3 or 4, but we can't attend half of the things that the superintendent attends.
Well, I think that the issue that we have here, Mrs. Agostini, again, we have had members ask to go to conferences or have expenses covered for things that it puts the administration in an awkward position of having to say no. And so we're trying to, the goal is to try to, as much as possible through policy, address these things to take the onus off of administration, because again, Dr. Davis has had examples where he's had to tell board members no, and the comment that comes back is, we'll see how this reflects on your evaluation or your performance, or feeds back into...
I can't imagine a board member even saying that. That sounds made up, but go ahead.
I mean, it's in writing. So again, the idea is to take it off of administration and put as much as possible in policy so that he and his staff don't get in the tough position of having to say no to us as a board when we ask to go to things that have nothing to do with being a school board member. Dr. Davis.
Thank you for recognizing me, Mr. Chair. Just for a clarification, I think it's important, particularly for our community, to have as much accurate information as they possibly can. And when we're listening to the things that we share, and particularly as it relates to superintendent's travel, I'd like to first state that, number one, I don't travel any more than my predecessors traveled. Number two, the associations that I were a part of, my predecessors were a part of that association as well, and I continued that. Number three, I have become a sitting member of multiple boards, national boards, things like College Board, AVID, and these are boards that our students get a direct benefit from as it relates to the training of our school district, i.e. we no longer send staff all over the state, all over the country to travel for AVID all summer. We bring the AVID travel, the AVID presentation to us now, which saves us tons of money as it relates to our implementation of AVID, but we are a district-wide AVID, and I represent the southeastern part of the country as one of a handful of superintendents around the country to help influence and set policy and work with AVID. The same thing with College Board, to sit on the advisory board of those things, and they do come with some travel and requirement. Number three, many of those travel requirements are covered by those organizations as my professional service to them for the betterment of students, not just here in Richland School District 2, for example, with AP, and now our school is one of 60 at Ridgeview High School that now has the African American Studies AP examination being piloted across this country. Those things are a little bit different. They're in relations to specific performance of the role of the superintendent. 4 or 5, it's in my contractual agreement that I have the ability to do those things, so they're not a violation of anything. And as I look at the meetings that are listed for the board members in this policy, I don't see a limitation of 3 or 4. When I look at this information that's stated, like the School Board Association, there are multiple School Board Association meetings that are held each year. If I'm not mistaken, there are 4, maybe 5 School Board Association meetings. There's a National School Board. In here is still listed the National School Board Association and the Consortium of School Boards, which could be 2 national conferences. So 5 plus those 2 national conferences would be at least 7. And that's not including things like CUBE, which would be 8. That's not including cost, but any of those things are now included in the ability for board members to travel. And in addition to that, the South Carolina Association of School Administrators, the R2i2 conference is listed in here. So clearly, there are multiple opportunities for board members to be able to attend conferences in this during a fiscal year that can surpass the conferences. And if it's about having more conferences than the superintendent, then I would ask that's a different discussion. But the opportunities are there. I think at the listing of meetings, as was stated earlier, the concern about the National School Board Association, this is still a very identified meeting or identified conference that board members can attend throughout the year should they choose to do so. So I applaud the board for the desire to want to be well-informed and receive professional development as it relates to their development as a board member. And I would ask the board to support the superintendent or any superintendent to do the very same, because the dividends are clearly, the dividends has clearly been shown that from those participations, our school district has benefited from it.
Yeah, and Dr. So I'm going to be a little more direct than you. When we had white superintendents, we didn't have an issue with them traveling. And now that you are our superintendent, we seem to have an issue with where you're going and what you're doing.
Mr. Manning,
that's a statement of fact. All right, are there any other questions or comments on this?
Yes, I have a
Dr.
comment.
Scott?
Yes, I was going to say to Dr. Davis that I'm glad that he made mention of the national organizations that he's a part of. Being a part of the National School Board Organization Association, there are many times that school board members have been recognized in their district for different scholarships they give out because the boards have presented at different workshops and conferences, as well as stipends and other things as well. So he just proved a point that is very important for school board members to be a part of national associations as well, because there are things that's tied back to student achievement, tied to monies that can go back to students when school board members are involved nationally as well. So I want to say that. And then back to your comment about black and white, I don't think this is a black and white issue. I think this is just a concern that a board member voiced. And I just hate when we want to bring in racial comments, but when someone brings in racial comments about us, then we have this, oh my God, you're attacking me, you're out to get me. So I think the comment that you just made was very inappropriate. And one, I can say, I've been on this board 10 years, a little less than what you have been on. And I have not seen other superintendents travel as much. That's not saying that I have an issue with Dr. Davis traveling. I'm just saying under the superintendents that I worked under, which was 3, I have not seen that, but I don't have a problem with that. And with that being said, I know that when we attend workshops and conferences, it's approved by Dr. Davis and Harry Malley. And I guess my question is, when Dr. Davis attends these workshops and conferences, since we are his supervisors and he's our only employee, who approves his workshops and conferences? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Scott. That, again, that's covered within his contract. Dr. Caution Parker and then Mrs. Mackey.
I tend to disagree with Dr. Scott. As the deputy superintendent for 16 years and working for 3 different superintendents, being left in charge when they go to meetings and conferences and things like that, I have to say that exactly what Mr. Manning said is completely accurate.
Thank you, Dr. Caution Parker. Ms. Mackey.
I'd just simply like the record to state that with regard to previous superintendents, none of their travel or anything was questioned with less accolades, with fewer accolades that we've had under Dr. Davis. I do know that Dr. Davis, since I've been on the board my years, is the most transparent in his traveling. And so that puts a spotlight on what he does. And other superintendents have not necessarily done that.
Thank you. All right, any other comments on this policy? All right, we'll now move on to item 11.1, draft agenda items for the October 25th, 2022 meeting. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the board, and to our members that are viewing with us this evening, and to those that are still with us here in our R2i2 facility. This is a draft agenda, proposed draft agenda for the October 25th, 2022 regular scheduled board meeting. That board meeting will be conducted at its regular scheduled business time and items. We will call the board meeting to order at 5:30. We will ask for a motion to go into executive session. In the executive session, we have as pending items, student appeals and breach of contracts. After concluding the business of executive session, we'll ask for a motion to return to public session. In public session, we'll begin with the with inspirational moment and pledge of allegiance. This is followed by the approval of the agenda. This is then be followed by the approval of our consent agenda, which is then followed by our Teacher of the Year recognition. So we'll have our Teacher of the Year recognitions. We'll have public participation, our first public participation, followed by voting on executive session items, which at this time includes student appeals and breach of contracts. We have unfinished business action requested. This will be policy BK, board membership and professional associations, and BID, board membership compensations and expenses. This is followed by new business action requested, which is an 8% bond resolution, followed by new business no action requested, which will be the Richland 2 highlights and an update on the capital improvements. We'll follow this by with agenda items for the following board meeting, which will be the November 18th board meeting, the approval of the draft agenda for the November 18th board meeting, public participation number 2, special recognitions. At this time, we'll recognize our outgoing board members who are not an incumbent, and so excluding the board member running for re-election. We'll have our board and superintendent comments. We'll have executive session number 2, the voting items for executive session number 2, and then ask for adjournment.
All right, any comments?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Agostini.
I move to add to the agenda policy JKE, expulsion of students, and JKER, the administrative rule, expulsion of students, for an update.
All right, motion made by Mrs. Agostini. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. McFadden. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
We were just told in mid-September there'd be an update, so I'm looking for an update.
Okay, I think we can do an update. I just want to caution us because we have had attorneys come to us and speak to us about those policies and cautioned us at this time to make changes before we have all the information, but we can certainly seek an update. But you've asked for it to be on the agenda. There's a second. Can we have any other discussion?
And Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me, executive session for this update.
So you want to have you're asking for a discussion on it, not.
In executive session, an update. We were told there would be an update in mid-September.
Okay, so I'm just make sure that I'm clear on what your motion is. Are you asking for it to be an update on, Dr. Davis, sorry?
I think I can help. We told the board that we will provide you with quarterly updates regarding numbers like expulsions, discipline updates. There were legal updates. There is a couple other updates that we said that we would provide you with quarterly. If this is what Ms. Agostini is asking for. And it was supposed to be in October. We decided as an administration to wait until November to provide you with those quarterly updates so that we don't have to share the information with new board members.
And Ms. Agostini, is that what you're asking for? Or are you asking specifically about the update on policy JKE?
Because I don't remember an update on the policy.
Because something took place in mid-September. I'd like to see if the administrative rule can be changed.
Okay, so this is Dr. Day, this is specifically about the policy JKE. And our attorneys had come and talked to us. We had some situations going on. I think they were waiting to see what the end result of that was. So I think what she's asking for.
I don't think that's been resolved yet.
Okay.
That situation.
So that situation.
I'll look into that. It's okay to take the vote and put it on there. If it needs to come off due to a pending legal matter, then we will notify you all. If it makes it to the agenda, we'll notify you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and, all right, so the motion's been made and it's been seconded. Any other discussion on this? All in favor, raise your right hand or say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Mackey, did I miss your hand? You're a no? Okay. All right, motion passes 6 yes, 1 no. Any other recommendations for this policy or for the update on the draft agenda? All right, we'll now move on to voting on the draft agenda.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Mackey.
I move to approve the draft agenda items for October 25th, 2022, with the addition of an update on policy JKE.
In executive session.
In executive session.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made by Ms. Mackey, seconded by Ms. McFadden. Is there any other discussion? With no discussion, we'll take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, if
Ms.
your
Agostini?
hand vote, that's a yes.
Okay. Well, I think we can do this one electronically.
I know, but I'm kicked out. That's why I'm.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
Yeah.
yes. All right. Motion passes unanimously. Second public participation, I will ask again, do I have either Ms. Tamara Brown in the room or Ms. Brittany Portee? All right, with that, we will move on. I am going to ask that we move, or I'm going to move board and superintendent comments to the end because we have a lot of folks that we're paying by the hour to be here. So we will move that to the end. If I can have a motion to go into a second executive session.
Mr. Chair.
Mrs. Mackey?
I move that we move into our second executive session at this time.
Second.
For the discussion of?
Sorry, I move that we move into our second executive session for the purpose of investigation update and receipt of legal advice.
All right, motion made by Ms. Mackey. To have a seconded by Dr. Holmes. Any discussion? All right, we'll have the vote.
Mr. Manning,
Yes, ma'am.
I have been informed that I can be a part of the first portion of the executive session, so I will stay on the line.
Okay. All right, motion passes unanimously. We'll now convene into the second executive session. All right, just for the sake of the public, Dr. Scott is not with us any longer via telephone. At this time, we are at board, or I need a motion to get out of executive session.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Mackey.
I move that the record reflect that executive session was concluded at approximately 10:27 p.m.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Mackey, seconded by Dr. Holmes. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes unanimously. If I can have a motion on the board and superintendent comments.
Mr. Chair?
Mrs. Agostini.
I move that we forego the board and superintendent comments this evening.
Thank you. Motion made by Ms. Agostini. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes unanimously. If I can have a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Agostini.
I move that we adjourn the October 11th, 2022 board meeting.
Motion made by Ms. Agostini. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Holmes. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Raise them high. Ms. Mackey, raise it high. Thank you. All, we're adjourned.